Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Brian Cofrancesco. I'm the Leadership Development Coordinator and a member of the Kiwanis Club of Meriden, Connecticut. I'm joined by Elyse Denorfia, who's our tech expert, and she's also going to be tonight's presenter. So I'll be introducing her formally in just a few minutes. So we are really pleased that you're able to join us for Self-Care and Mindfulness. This is the 5th session in our virtual workshop series. For the next few months, we will offer a workshop or a learning opportunity every Wednesday evening at 7. Please take advantage of these free sessions and encourage your other club members to register too. You should have received a notice about the January workshops via email, but if you haven't, please send me an email at education@newenglandkiwanis.org and we will look into it. And we're going to drop that email address in the chat, so if you need to reach out, you'll have it right there. So before we start tonight's workshop, some housekeeping. Please mute yourself to ensure an uninterrupted presentation. And if you're new to Zoom, the mute button is in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And if you see a line through the microphone, that indicates that you are muted. You're invited to introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like, your name, your club, where you're from. And you are also welcome to pose questions in there for Elyse throughout the program this evening. If you're watching on Facebook, you can comment on the live stream with your questions and we'll grab them from there to ask at the end. Tonight's workshop will be about an hour and we are live streaming to Facebook, and a recording will be uploaded to our district YouTube channel tomorrow. And we'll also post a link for the channel in the chat. So let's get started. I'm not telling you anything new when I say that the last 10 or 12 months have been a very stressful period for many of us, whether we've been impacted personally or professionally or both. And as Kiwanians, we also have concerns about how the pandemic in particular is impacting our clubs and our communities, and of course, the kids that need us most. So that's the impetus for tonight's workshop, more of a professional development or personal development session, self-care and mindfulness. Tonight, you'll learn tactics for caring for your mental and physical health, reducing stress, and supporting others. Our speaker is none other than Elyse Denorfia, who is a past district governor, a past Circle K governor, a past Key Clubber, president of the Kiwanis Club. The list just goes on. She's basically a Kiwanian extraordinaire. And Elyse and I have known each other since we were in Key Club in neighboring high schools, and I've had the highest respect for her, not only as a leader in Kiwanian, but as a social worker. And she's the perfect person to be presenting tonight's session, and I'm sure that each of us will leave with tools to take care of ourselves and our mental health during this difficult time. So without further ado, please welcome Elyse Denorfia.
That's a lovely introduction. Thank you so much, Brian. I am going to share my screen right now, so you should see a PowerPoint pop up. Brian, can you give me a thumbs up if you could see that? Okay, great. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend this workshop. Like Brian said, last year when we were planning out workshops, we developed different avenues or different training areas that people really liked being trained in. And one of the areas was personal development. So this kind of came forward as an idea for personal development, just learning a little bit more about taking care of ourselves. And presenting this, although I'm a 20-year Kiwanian this year, I am presenting this as a clinical social worker. My background as a mental health therapist. This workshop is not gated by Kiwanis. I just want to let you know that this is based on my background, my research, my knowledge base, and the thoughts are mine or mine alone. So if there are any questions or concerns, feel free to direct them to me. I know that this, during this pandemic and life in general has been really stressful, especially the last 10 months. So I think that it's really important that we talk about self-care and mindfulness on a regular basis, because we all need it. What's going on in the world can be really stressful for us. It can be really stressful for the communities that we serve. And we want to make sure that we're able to be emotionally stable when we're experiencing this tension or this strain in our communities, in the world. And so, typically we would ask for you to keep your cameras on so that we can engage with each other like we would a workshop, like we were sitting face to face in a conference room. But if you feel comfortable, you can leave your camera on. If you feel comfortable turning your camera off, feel free to do that. I would encourage you all to do as we sit here and have this conversation. I would encourage you to maybe give your attention, maybe close other tabs and other things that you might be working on, and really just take this, even though it's going to be quite a bit of information, take this as a 45-minute break for yourself. I'd like to start with just a quick little mindfulness exercise, just to kind of get us all here together, present in the moment and on the same page. So if you feel comfortable, I would ask you to close your eyes or maybe look down. Just notice with no judgment what you're feeling in your body. If you have any tension or muscle tightness, notice your breath as you inhale and exhale. Notice the thoughts that are popping into your head. Just notice, don't judge, just notice as you listen to my voice. Take a few moments and notice what is going on for you. How are you feeling? Are you feeling happy to be here? Are you feeling hungry because we scheduled a work for 7 p.m.? Just breathing and noting. And as we get into this conversation about self-care and mindfulness, I want you, think about how you feel thankful about the moment that we have and the that we are able to share this together. Take note of what's going on for you, what's going through your head. And remember that if we are mindful, we can change the next moment, and we can change the next moment to be better than the current moment if we need it to. So just take one final breath in and exhale, and feel free to open your eyes or look back at the screen or do whatever. So some of the things that we're going to be talking about today is what is self-care, what is mindfulness, why they are important, how they affect us in our work with Kiwanis and service leadership programs, how we can improve our self-care, and how improving our self-care will enable us to completely serve the children of the world through our work with Kiwanis. We will be doing a little activity at the end. So I'm hoping that you saw in the email, you're able to grab a pen and a notebook at some point that will be helpful, or a piece of paper, Post-it. It doesn't have to be anything big and extravagant, but if you could have that ready for our activity later, that would be great. So we're going to start off by talking about self-care. What is self-care? The term self-care refers to really any activity or practice that we engage in on a regular basis that helps us to reduce stress, helps us to maintain or enhance our mental health, our well-being. It's really any intentional action that you take to care for your own physical, mental, and emotional health. So it's a pretty broad topic, but what we're looking to do is reduce stress and really just make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. So we're going to go through a couple examples of self-care in different aspects of your life. So when we think of categories of self-care, you want to have self-care in a personal or organizational setting, like you might in your Kiwanis club at work. So that could include creating boundaries, creating a support network at work or in your Kiwanis club. If you have a job that would require some sort of supervision or someone that you can rely on would be really useful. An example of physical self-care would be making a good sleep routine, a healthy diet, taking lunch breaks, just a couple minutes away from your desk if you work at a desk, perhaps moving your body. If you have sick time, using your sick time when you need it, for preventative health care. That's always a good thing to do. Some examples of psychological self-care would be finding things that make you feel good. So maybe relaxation or time with family or friends. It could include things like journaling, meditation, hobbies, not checking your email all the time, especially Kiwanis emails if you get a lot of them. Emotional self-care could be supportive friendships, socials with close friends, spiritual self-care, something that is a reflective practice. It could be going to a church, mosque, temple. It could be meditation, yoga, just singing, kind of reflecting a little bit deeper with a friend. Relationships, so prioritizing close relationships. If you work outside of the home, making sure that you're leaving home on time to end to those relationships, following through on commitments, things like that. So why is self-care important? Really, when we care for ourselves, we are able to be more confident people. We have higher levels of self-esteem and self-awareness. You're putting importance on yourself, importance on your relationships. So it helps to really improve your relationships. You learn to understand what's important to you. It allows us as people the capacity to give back to others, because a lot of times when we are overwhelmed and stressed, we're not able to give back. And as part of a service organization, we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so that we can help other people. I have this tool that I do sometimes with clients or when I'm training, talking about stress. I actually have a little video I'm going to do in a second too. But when we think about stress, this is a thing, it's called a Hoberman ear. And when we think about stress in our body, it's the reaction of our body that kind of tends to be really quick. Right? It's increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, sometimes upset stomach. You can have GI issues. It affects your appetite, weight gain, weight loss. When we reduce our stress, we're able to elevate our mood, boost our immune system, and it gets more space for productivity. Stress is a natural reaction. Everybody experiences stress. But when we're able to take that stress, that really fast moving, and slow it down and really kind of work through it in a way that's functional, it makes us a lot more productive in the things that we do. And I think this next video, and hopefully it works, is a great indicator of why self-care is important. There we go. It's just 45 seconds.
Let me introduce you to the stress bucket. The bucket is you, and the water is the stress that you face every day. Sometimes that stress might just be a little trickle, but other times it comes thick and fast. Now, everyone only has so much capacity, so at some point the thing is going to overflow and you are going to be overwhelmed. But what if I told you that every time you exercise, it's like doing this? When you make time to see friends, it's like doing this. When you make time to rest, and meditation, and relaxation. So even if the stress keeps coming, as long as you have enough small self-care habits, the bucket will never overflow and you'll never have to get overwhelmed.
So that's just a little video that I really like to show. That shows us the importance of self-care. I was going to do a hands-on demonstration right here and flip a bucket and empty the bucket, but I thought that really messy in my office and I didn't really want to deal with that. But I think this video is a good descriptor indicator of how engaging in those self-care activities on a regular basis allows us the capacity to give back to others. When you think about it, if we feel depleted or burnt out or angry or stressed, we have negative reactions. We put out negative energy into the world, and we don't really age in the way that we want to, or the way that we want to present ourselves. So when we engage in self-care activities, things that are fulfilling and enjoyable to us, They help us form more positive relationships with ourselves, with our family, our communities, clubs. So, as a summary, self care really means that in order to give to others, in order to be Kiwanians and servant leaders and function in the way that we want to in our organization and in the world, we really have to take care of ourselves, put ourselves first, and be the recipient of that health and that wellness.
Let me introduce you.
Oop. I thought it was that. It did that last time when I tested it. I don't know why. I really like the image. I think it's circled around, if some of you use social media, it's talking about mindfulness. You notice in the little image, it's a guy or a person walking with a cute little puppy. You just see the little tail, right? Look at the person mind, and it is completely full of it looks like a chaotic mashup of thoughts. And the dog is just noticing, the sun and trees and the walk that they're having. And I think that this is a really, really nice depiction or image describing mindfulness. Mindfulness is a term I think has been more popular lately, or we hear it in the media maybe a little bit more. But really, it's a very old practice. There's a lot of neuroscientific research on the benefits of mindfulness using fMRI machines and brain scans that I think is fascinating, but I'm not going to go into tonight because it's not fascinating for everybody. But basically, the result is that research shows us that brain functioning improves with mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness is paying attention to the moment on purpose and without judgment, the activity that we did right at the beginning. Most people spend very little time being present in their lives. If you think about it, probably right now in your brain, it's a never-ending stream of notes, ideas, to-do lists, grocery lists, maybe service project ideas, inspiration. Oh, I have to email my club about, there's always something going on, right? And time moves really quickly if your mind is always moving around. If you've ever noticed a day, you're like, I don't even know what I got done today, what I did, what happened today. That's because your mind was too full of too many other tasks. You weren't able to be mindful and experience the moments of the day. When we think like this, when our brains are jumping all over the place, it makes it really difficult to be effective. It can be hard to focus on what's important. It really difficult to engage and enable others and to work on what we want to work on and to achieve what's expected of us. So mindfulness is really just the art of slowing down, really just paying attention to our lives, moment by moment, on purpose, without judgment, with an openness to whatever kind of pops up in your brain in that moment, and maybe even a little bit of kindness to the thoughts, kind of noticing that they're just thoughts in that moment, just experiences, and kind of going from there. So there's a helpful acronym that I use often if we're practicing mindfulness, which is STOP, S-T-O-P. And basically it's just stop what you're doing, take a breath. O is for observe how you're feeling. And P is just proceed with what you're doing. So it's not necessarily a big, long, drawn out practice. It's just taking that moment, taking a couple breaths to notice what's going on with you and how you're feeling. So why is this important? Being able to be mindful in the moment slows down our brain process. It lets us turn off autopilot and take control of the plane and our lives. It allows us to make mindful, constructive, and respectful decisions and choices in different situations. It allows a person to have thoughtful and respectful responses, and we're going to talk about that, I think, in the next slide just a little bit. It allows us to take responsibility for the way we relate to, engage with other people, and relate to and engage with the world around us. People are able to recognize what's going on in a moment and change what happens in the next moment. So if you notice you're feeling really angry or reactive and you're able to stop and take that moment and say, oh, I don't know why I'm reacting in that big a way. Okay, I can change this next moment and kind of figure out why you're feeling that way and kind of move forward in a more positive way. Mindfulness allows a person to be conscious of themselves, their thoughts, their emotions, their behaviors, the impact that they have on other people. It allows a person to stop maybe defensive or reactive responses, because sometimes we're feeling very stressed. Our responses can be very defensive or reactive if we just kind of let them automatically happen. And regular mindful practices show a decrease in unhealthy behaviors, a decrease in stress, anxiety, depression, and an increase in attention, focus, emotional regulation, compassion, resilience, ability to cope with daily life stressors. The list goes on. It really does increase a person's emotional intelligence, communication skills, relationship satisfaction. And there are other benefits to mindfulness, such as improved sleep, decreased blood pressure, which is, better for your heart. It can help your immune system or your the ability to kind of bounce back from, illnesses, things like that. The studies are really, really interesting to look at. Mindfulness and meditation can change the relationship that your body has with pain and actually reduces some symptoms of pain. And it really does improve the neuroplasticity in your brain, which is helpful for long lives, which I hope for all of you and all of us. So there are different mindful check-ins that you kind of do with yourself on a regular basis. One of them is mindful breathing. So kind of notice your breath, notice your inhale, notice your exhale, and kind of do that for maybe a minute, maybe 30 seconds, whatever feels most comfortable to you. During conversations, a lot of times people spend most of their time noticing, hearing what the other person is saying with the intention of responding to them, as opposed to listening for the content of what they're saying. So if you're doing some mindful conversations, mindful listen, really listening to the content of what the person is saying, taking a moment and then responding, as opposed to just crafting your response in that time. You can do mindfulness while you're driving. You can just notice safely things around you that are along your route. Maybe you drive the same route to work every day and you're like, oh, I never noticed that, that fence is now painted red. It used to be white, because you're just busy kind of going through your day. But you can look around and notice things safely while you're driving, because you're in the car anyway. When you're walking, the way to do some mindful walking would be to notice the way the air feels. Notice the sun on your skin. Notice that it feels to engage your muscles, maybe the crunching of the pavement, or how soft the grass is under your shoes. You can do things like that. And then the last suggestion that I have on this slide is to notice the tension in your body. It's called a body scan. And what you would really do is kind of start at the top of your head and just kind of notice, where is the tension in your body? Kind of go muscle group by muscle group, or area by area, starting with your head, maybe neck and shoulders. That's where my tension is right now, because it still feels like public speaking, even though we're on Zoom. Notice if there's any tension in your arms, shoulders, torso, pelvis, legs, feet, and just kind of notice the tension. And if you're able to, you can even maybe tighten and release it. And that might make your body feel a little bit better. So this slide, how do self-care and mindfulness relate to Kiwanis? I think that it really does in a number of ways that we don't really think about on a regular basis. The ways that I highlighted here are that it reduces burnout or compassion fatigue, which might be somebody feeling indifferent towards the service projects that they're participating in, or not really appreciating the impact that we have in our communities. I think that we do a lot of great work. Sometimes if we're stressed and we're overwhelmed, then we might not really truly appreciate that experience. So taking that time to engage in the self-care or the mindfulness activities can help us to engage in the projects that we do with Kiwanis a little bit more. It allows us to reduce self-care and mindfulness, allows us to reduce our stress symptoms. It helps us to build a plan to sustain and rejuvenate ourselves so that we can successfully serve our community. It really allows for meaningful engagement. It helps us to set boundaries. I know this is a problem that Kiwanis has, where Kiwanis members wear too many hats than fit on their head, right? We all have lots of roles. But when we're really truly engaging in self-care, we might feel more comfortable to set boundaries and not wear all the hats all the time, and feel comfortable saying, that's too much for me, that'll be overwhelming. I'm working on that one. 20 years in, I still don't have it yet, but we'll get there. A lot of the strategies that we do in self-care or mindful strategies help us to reduce the impact of anxiety, depression, other mental health concerns. And I think that can be really important when we think about, ourselves and our experiences. The National Institute of Mental Health says that about 20% of adults experience anxiety disorders. About 32% of adolescents, which is age 13 to 18, experience anxiety disorders. So I like to think of that in terms of our, I guess that would be Builders Club or Key Clubbers. A lot of us work with our leadership programs. And when we think about the impact of anxiety on their lives, we really want to encourage them to practice good self-care habits as the adults in their lives. A lot of times we serve and role model with them. So we want to encourage them to practice good self-care habits. And we can do that by showing them boundary setting, showing them self-care, and telling them that it's okay to engage in self-care activities. It's good. You shouldn't be spending all your time on Key Club. You should be, doing other things that make you feel good and fulfilled. But when we think about anxiety disorders and the increase over the last couple of years, it's alarming. We need to make sure that we're taking care of the youth and the communities that we serve. So I always kind of relate the thoughts about engaging in self-care and mindfulness to our service leadership programs. And they talk about mental health issues. They talk about self-care and mindfulness way more in the last maybe decade or so than we ever did when I was a service leadership member, and way more than I think other generations would feel comfortable with when they were that age. It's a lot more mental illness and talking of mental health issues are a lot more prevalent now. It's a much more open society. So I think if we're okay talking about self-care and mindfulness with some of the youth that we work with, I think it will be important to show them that we understand that their lives are stressful and that the things that they're experiencing are stressful, especially right now during COVID. And, they're still trying to run their organizations and do service and, be great servant leaders through all of this. And they're doing great things. But we have to remind them sometimes to take care of themselves too. So something that's really important, and I don't think we do enough, is to kind of create a self-care plan, something that we do for ourselves on a regular basis. Science says that 15 to 30 minutes a day or 60 to 100 minutes a week should be engaging in self-care. Those are kind of minimum numbers. I would encourage, if possible, you guys to engage in more self-care than that, because I think it's a matter of the more the merrier. Really, you're going to feel better the more self-care that you're able to engage in. So what we would recommend from a professional perspective is identifying 3 to 5 practices that can help reduce your stressors. So that's internal stressors that you're experiencing, external stressors, and then go a step further if you think about goal setting. So thinking about potential roadblocks to engaging in your self-care, like, finding time to do it and coming up with a solution. Okay, if I put it in my schedule, maybe I'm more inclined to do it. And identify negative strategies to avoid. A little personal anecdote. I bought a 2020 planner last year and used it for 2 months, and then the world shut down. So this year I bought a different one that's like a goal setting planner, and it's super intense. I would maybe not recommend it to everybody, but it literally says, what are your 2 goals for the week? And then every day, Monday through Sunday, it has little boxes and you check off whether you did them that day or not. So mine this week were to meditate every day, which I do, and then either walk or read, because both of them are really good for my own mental health. And so here's Wednesday. All I have to do today is meditate. And I like it because it's fulfilling to me to check off the little boxes. So sometimes it has to be that explicit for yourself, that you are creating something where you're literally checking off boxes in order to kind of follow through with the tasks. We're going to do a quick little activity. So we are going to create a self-care plan for ourselves. So when we're thinking about, I put little examples in the boxes. I really hope that you guys are able to see it. For those of you on a phone, it might be really small, but there's 6 different categories that I kind of, I didn't create this, but I'm sharing here with you today in different areas to focus on in terms of your self-care. So they're the areas that we spoke about earlier. So physical self-care, emotional self-care, relationship self-care, psychological, spiritual, and workplace / Kiwanis. I added Kiwanis in there because I think it's so important in our organization to also have really good boundaries in self-care. And I put a little example there. So I was hoping that we could take about 5 minutes to go through, and just on your own, not necessarily, needing to share, but we will break up into groups, I think, in it if we have time, and if you feel comfortable sharing one. It might be useful from an accountability perspective. But I guess what I really want you to do is maybe choose 2 things or maybe 2 areas over the next week that you feel like you could do to take care of yourself. So, for example, if you wanted to choose, the physical realm, you could say, I'm going to be in bed by 11 o'clock every night for the next week, something maybe 3 times next week, if that's a goal for you. So we'll take about 5 minutes now. If you could identify, I would recommend maybe 2 things that you think you could work on in the next week, and then we'll take a minute to chat about it. Okay, so let's go one step further. When we're thinking about those 1 or 2 items that we have identified for ourselves, or more is great, in terms of self-care, let's think about some of the barriers. What can get in the way of engaging in that self-care activity, maybe a couple times next week or on a regular basis, depending on what the activity is. So is there something that might get in the way? Are there any negative strategies that you need to avoid? And think about, if you were to implement this plan, how would you feel? Would you feel successful if you were able to take some time to take care of yourself a couple times next week? So think through, are there any barriers that get in the way of engaging in self-care? Are there any negative strategies to avoid? And think about how it might make you feel if you were successful in achieving your goal. Let's give it 1 more minute. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just take maybe about 7 minutes. And we're going to go in, we're going to split you up in little groups and then go into breakout rooms. And if you feel comfortable sharing in the room, maybe one way that you are going to do, or one thing that you're going to do this week that is self-care related. And if you felt comfortable sharing a barrier or something that would feel good, feel free to share that. If you've never done a breakout room before, you should get a message that is sending you into the breakout room. You might have to click something on your screen that says go into breakout room. And
we're ready to go if you are.
We are good. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you guys had a couple minutes to share if you were willing and if you wanted to. I'm, like I said before, I'm a mental health therapist, but, we're not always the best at taking care of ourselves too. But last year, I decided to engage in a mindfulness and meditation challenge. And I started that on January 4th of 2021. And now I am 373 consecutive days into meditation. So I would encourage anyone to use it. I primarily use it for sleep, and it really helps me a lot. I'm going to share the name of a free app. You can find it on any Apple or Android product that I use. It's kind of, if you've heard of maybe Calm, it's called Insight Timer. I just shared the name of it in the chat, and you can download it for free. There are parts that you have to pay for. They're not a sponsor of mine. I just really like their product. There are courses and things that you could do. They have a lot of free mindfulness meditation content that I think is just really great. So that's just something that I personally used on a regular basis. But if you guys have any questions, I would be happy to answer them now. Brian, do we have any questions sent in the chat?
We do not have any questions that have come in the chat or on Facebook.
Okay.
But now is the time. If you have one, drop it in the chat. One thing I'd like to ask you is, what's the name of that planner that you have that lets you do 2 goals a week with little check boxes?
Ooh, okay. So this is because of my mom. It is called the Panda Planner by Rocketbook, and it's actually has this little panda face on it. You can buy it on Amazon. I think it's about $25. The thing that I like about it is you only plan out like three months. No, it's 7 days at a time, and it's like erasable pens. So you just like kind of wipe the pages clean. So you're not like wasting, like every year I used to buy like a planner every year. And then I would like not really use it. And I felt like it was a lot of paper waste. I wasn't being very productive with. So yeah, I found this one. It's super skinny. You can fit it in like a laptop bag or a purse. And you can just like erase it, wipe it clean. Also, not a sponsor of our Kiwanis World Workshop series, just a product that I discovered and enjoy. That Amazon, man.
But maybe they will be a future sponsor. We will work on that.
Maybe we should reach out to them. Yeah.
Well, not a question, but some really great comments from Sylvia and from Elyse about the feeling of being calm and serenity and soothing. And I have to say, it was really great that you have such a great voice to be able to talk about this too, and to help everybody start the session by being mindful. So I think that was wonderful. We do have a question from Sandra. How long did it take for you to get into the routine of setting your goals?
Good question. I think that I have done some level of goal setting for a number of years, but I'm someone that's very much I'm not internally motivated. I'm externally motivated. So I need check boxes. One of my goals for 2021, because I've spent the last 10 months sitting. One of my goals was to walk 30 miles in the month of January. So I literally made myself a little, these are miles, ignore how messy it is. Nobody was supposed to see this, but I literally counted out the number of miles and I wrote the dates that I walked the number of miles on it. For me, I mean, you have to find systems that work for you, right? So for me, I need the checklist stuck on my wall that I can see every day, or the little check boxes next to desk. So I would say that it is a work in progress and always a work in progress. But I would say it's something that I've worked on over the last couple of years, which doesn't exactly answer your question, Sandra, but I'm trying.
And I think that's, at least for me, one of the biggest takeaways is to be intentional and to try to be mindful. And you may not get it every time, but the more you try, the more you'll get to that point.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for questions. Elyse, do you have any parting words before we go back to being the tech expert?
No, if anybody has any questions for me, I will send my email in the chat and you can save that. Most of you already have it. So there you go. Brian, do you want me to share the schedule now?
That would be great.
Okay.
So I want to thank you, Elyse, for such a wonderful presentation, such a great turnout tonight. And thank you to all of you who have attended tonight and many of you who familiar faces that we're seeing week to week. If you haven't already, remember to please sign up for our last 2 sessions in January. So Elyse has the schedule pulled up. Next week on January 20th, we have District Secretary Stephen Hill, who is presenting on club filing and reporting. So this is really good for anyone who's interested in club functions, but especially for club leaders to get a sense of the annual reports that your club must file with the state and federal governments. So perfect time to tune in for that next week, 7 o'clock. And the following week on January 27th, we have Jessica Plant and Donna Roberts from the Kiwanis Club, who are presenting socially distant service projects, hands-on service projects that clubs can do while social distancing. So remember to sign up for these sessions and please encourage your fellow members to do the same. You can find more information on our district Facebook page, in our district Facebook group, and on the registration link in the chat. There's also information on the district website, and we have a playlist on our YouTube channel, which will be dropping in the chat as well. So you can't miss it. There's information everywhere. On our YouTube channel in particular, you can find recordings on a playlist for the sessions that we've had to date, as well as the ones we have this summer for our virtual district convention if you missed those. And a final reminder that if you did not receive an email about our January workshops, please check your promotions or spam folder, or you can send an email to education@newenglandkiwanis.org, and we will send you along some details. And keep an eye out soon for our February schedule of workshops, which will be due out later on this month. So with that, thank you again to Elyse for such a great presentation and for being the tech expert at the same time to help make this workshop possible. And thank you to all of you for joining us for tonight's self-care and mindfulness workshop. We hope to see you next week, and stay safe, be well, and thank you for being a Kiwanian.